dishwasher on behind me. Can you interfere with your audio?
No, it's all good. It's all good. There's a few storms ricocheting around outside at the moment too, so hopefully there's no power interruptions. So
Okay.
Either way will be good. Either way.
Yeah.
So what you up to? Anything exciting?
Yeah.
Oh, good.
I just look forward to each day. I told you that last week as well. You know, there's something that's cleared in my head, and yeah, each day is a good day. I'm more motivated than for a number of years. You know, probably the most I've been in Australia, as I'm feeling. I don't know. It's nothing particular. I'm not grabbing onto something and holding it. I just feel relaxed, and certainly I lack energy, physical energy.
Yeah.
But in the head, no.
Okay. Well, that's good.
Yeah.
Good
What about you?
Yeah. No, I'm good. Yeah. Yeah. Nothing too exciting happening. It's just, you know, day after day.
Yeah.
I've started thinking about topics and stuff for the next book. I haven't sort of settled on anything yet, but there's a few ideas in the incubator, so I'll see what emerges for that. So,
any sort of pattern, without getting into any detail? I think just sort of overall, is it still going to be the same concept as the first book, talking about a spiritual journey? Yeah.
I think it'll have spiritual aspects to it because that's an important priority for me at the moment. But I think, I don't know, just with the study I've been doing and that sort of thing, there's a few sort of key concepts that have been coming up, and it just seems to me, you know, that there's an opportunity to write from a personal perspective about some of the ideas. I mean, it's a bit abstract at the moment, so I just sort of need to let it sit and incubate a bit. But I kind of feel that there's something there waiting to emerge. So,
Yeah. If you think that there's some topics that you and I can chat that might clarify your mind,
okay.
You must just mention it. Thanks for the mention in the beginning of your book.
It's my pleasure.
I appreciate that. Who are the other guys that you mentioned then?
Well, Douglas Harding, he's one of the other authors. He's deceased now, but he's one of the other authors that I've followed. I've read, I think, all of his books, or just about all of them.
They're authors, are they?
Yeah, and one of them, Sadhguru, just his name rather than Sadhguru. So
yeah.
And Ruth is just someone that sort of has been around for, I don't know, a long time, and a bit like yourself, you know, we have deep and meaningful conversations, not very often, but from time to time, and she helped with the proofreading of the book and stuff like that. So
Okay.
Having said that, I still found mistakes, but that's by the by. It just means it's real, doesn't it? Just means it's real.
You will find mistakes in a few years' time as well.
Yeah.
No, it's the name of the game. It cannot be perfect. I have no idea why. I've heard that from a number of different sources.
Yeah. I mean, it's no big deal. It's no big deal. But you just sort of think, like, you know, you read it 1,000 times and you think, oh, how could I miss that?
Yeah. The point is that you put it there in the beginning, so it's where it's meant to be. You think you're conscious, and so you pass over it. I do it all the time in my writing.
Yeah.
You know, so.
And yet, for other people, they can just pick it up and open up and say, "Oh, look, there's a spelling mistake there." Yeah. So how did you see that?
This, you know, I don't know if it's going to be relevant to you or not, but the word that I've been reading and researching and making some notes about is the word culture.
Okay.
I'm not quite sure where it started. I was reading Moya Chalubi's African Renaissance. I'm just still reading it occasionally, and he spoke about culture, and but I had also stumbled on the word, and it caught my imagination, and so I sort of made some notes. Where did culture start? I guess if I'm going to ask you this in a moment. What do you understand by culture? But I've always seen it sort of in a hysterical, not hysterical, in a historical perspective. So you talk about a Roman culture or a Greek culture or an Arab culture or a Chinese culture, and yeah. So that's so. But now you think about it in modern day situation. How do you see, what is your take? I know I've thrown this in, but just spontaneously, what do you understand?
Well, the first thing that comes to mind is it's like the social norms and I don't know if processes is the right word, but attitudes, maybe values in there somewhere, that sort of predominate at a particular point in time. But I think it's something that's constantly evolving. And I think like when you sort of talk about, like a Roman culture or something like that, well, that was that community, if you want to term it like that, was very powerful in terms of the style of culture that it had. Like it was very much a shame and pride sort of culture, which really reinforced, like in a very powerful sense, reinforced, their view about what was okay and acceptable and what wasn't. So yeah, I'd sort of probably characterize it more about.
Yeah, that's a group culture. See, and that's what I'm talking about to start off with. Is rather than the individual. The Romans, used to go and watch people's heads being cut off, or the lions eating people, or whatever.
Oh, exactly right. Yeah, it was
the culture, and you went and enjoyed it. Like people now play on their cell phones. They used to go to the ring and watch somebody being murdered.
Well, here's an idea for you. Like if you look at the old ideas around like worship of idols.
Yeah.
Like, do you think it's alive today? I think it is, and I think that these things, these mobile phones and stuff, are virtually a form of idol. Because people worship them. So yeah.
I agree, but I think you can, I think you can say now that that Christianity is worshiping idols. Okay. And a number of different religions, because what they've turned into, and the people that have turned them into, and what they're using them for. Okay, because they now
and that's a really important point, because for me, like if you want to, well, I think that if you let the vocabulary of the scripture do the talking, it's really important to go back, because it's an ancient text. It's really important to go back and understand what words were used and what was the meaning and intention of those words, and, you know, like try and understand the intent of the author and that sort of thing, rather than use our modern view of the cosmos and sort of try and make it fit that, because it was never envisaged around that. It was always...
No, I agree. It's what you study now on the Old Testament, but that's a different. That's what the meaning of the book was. But if you look at a culture of Jesus was in the Roman time, the culture of the Romans. Okay, he came along and he was totally different, him and his disciples, to the culture of the Romans. Okay, I mean,
it was a real complex mix, wasn't it? You know, in those days, you know,
it was a conflict, big time. But now come to today. Okay, let's just still looking broadly at culture. Take the Hamish. Okay, they've got a culture. Okay, you know, I don't know too much about them, but basically, I don't think they eat meat and they farm off the land and they don't use any technology. Now, that is a culture, okay, a group of people that have a culture. Okay, they thrive and they run their life according to that culture. Okay, you know, the Israel and the Jewish people have a very strong, had and still have a very strong culture. And you know, is it good? Is it bad? I think it is. Maybe to find one word, I think using the word identity, it gives a group of people an identity that they enjoy and they want to be part, they want to be identified with that group. Okay, maybe another word is mass consciousness.
Well, do you think that culture will change, you know, when extraterrestrial life, you know, becomes mainstream? So you've got humans, and then you've got non-human beings, and you know, so do you think that'll sort of, perhaps, you know, people ask the question, what does it mean to be human? It's probably not a question they ask themselves much these days, really. But
well, it depends whether the aliens. I think the aliens are probably human as well, but just in a different form, maybe in a reptile form, but behave and talk and intellectually, you know, human as we know. I mean, take here in Australia where we are, the Aborigines. Okay.
Yep.
The Aborigines go back. I don't know. I've seen things baited around now with all the stuff on TV about the Aborigines and the yes and no vote and so on. They go back about, I don't know, 40,000 years.
Long time.
Yeah. And to this day, they still have a culture, even after the Western culture, maybe where you and I come from, okay, impregnated Australia. Yeah, you know, we conquered Australia, and but they still have clearly a culture that they enjoy sticking. Yes, they might put a suit and tie on and go to work in the office and so on, but they still have a culture that goes back that 40,000 years. Don't you think so?
I do.
Yeah.
So, and I mean, that's been one of the significant challenges for them, is because, you know, the governments and probably the mainstream have a view that they should become like white people.
Yeah, but that's you know, that happened in South Africa as well. You know, you had the black people coming down from the north. You had the Bushmen people were resident for 40,000 years there before the white and the black people came in. And then what happened? The same as Australia. The white people enslaved.
That's all it is, isn't it? Hey.
Yes, absolutely. And so it could only last in South Africa, I don't know what, 40 or 50 years. And especially when they put it in, all the things into law, and they separated the two people because they believed, we believed, the Westerners, that we had a better culture and they needed to adopt our culture. Okay. Which I question. Okay. I question, you know, both here in Australia and in South Africa, the two countries we know, you know, I'm sure the same is in other countries.
I personally find this whole yes, no thing offensive in the sense that, you know, like particularly the no campaign. I just find it obnoxious. I really do. Like, you know, why wouldn't you want to acknowledge and weave into your constitution and all of that sort of stuff, you know, First Peoples? Like, why wouldn't you? Like, it seems to me just to be a total denial of their existence, you know. Like, that's my view.
It's our Western culture, Don. That's what I'm saying. You see, that's what sort of really made it something in my mind this week to think about. It's you know, we come here as conquerors.
It's a very arrogant, self-centered approach, though, isn't it? You know, so.
Of course it is, and it always has been. Okay,
because it's about power, isn't it? You know, I mean,
absolutely.
I mean, that's the main reason. That's the main reason that Jesus Christ was crucified. It was all about threat to people's power.
Yeah. And it's been developing satanically towards consumerism. That culture, that's what we stand for. Is that culture? Okay.
No.
We in collective term.
Well, I'd even go as far as to say that a lot of corporate brands are the equivalent of idols. People worship them.
Oh, absolutely. That's a good analogy. Yeah, absolutely. It's hardly an analogy, just like it is.
It is. That's right.
Yes. So, you know, I mean, take different blood groups, you know, you've got A positive and O and different blood groups, you know, so people should eat according to those blood groups. You know, that could be a culture too, you know. You know what I mean?
Well, as I said, in my mind, it's sort of anything that almost becomes like a social norm, isn't it? You know, or a social requirement.
In a grouping, where a social, but then the opposite also happens, doesn't it? The opposite being the anti-establishment groups. Okay, that rebel against everything that's here today.
It's an interesting position, though, isn't it? Because if you, like, even the term, if you're anti this or anti that, then what are you?
Yeah. Well, you are, but you're anti.
We know what you.
That is anti.
We know what you're not, but what are you? You know, yeah. Well, that's true.
Yeah. So, you know, are we getting nearer to what is culture? I'm not sure. You see, it's probably a lot easier to talk about the individual and you know what is culture, but that wasn't my purpose. My purpose was there are these groupings of people, and it's culture that's keeping them apart. Okay, and imagine the type of culture you get in Indonesia.
So are you saying that culture is almost like the vehicle to ensure that a small group of people maintain the position that they want.
Yes. Okay. And they believe in it. Okay. And they probably, their religion is incorporated into it. So they worship that whole thing, you know. We are Hindu, we are Muslim, we are Christians, and whatever else. So that's a culture that, in my opinion, that culture has to disappear for us to get to a new world.
Oh, all the divisions, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, diversity is good because that's what nature is incredibly diverse, but it's all integrated into one ecosystem in effect, isn't it? You know, so.
Yeah, in itself, as you were saying earlier, by going back to the Old Testament and looking at the Old Testament, we go back to the original religious sects from, more than 2,000 years ago. They all had a collectiveness that had love as the center of their religion. Okay, it was love for God or love for the Son of God, or
well,
love.
I suppose if you look at like the Torah, I mean, and this is where you have to sort of be fairly precise. Like the Torah is a story, but contained within that story, there's something like 610 commandments.
Yeah.
And some people look at those 610 commandments and they talk about them being the law. And I'm not sure that, I mean, I to be honest with you, I don't know enough about the history of it and so on, but my sense of it is that they were probably more about wisdom and guidance about how to live a spiritual life, rather than, I saw the other day there's someone wrote a book about they lived a 12-month period strictly following the literal interpretation of the Bible.
Yeah.
Even to the extent that at one stage there was this woman that he knew that he decided that she'd committed adultery, and he threw pebbles at her as if to stone her.
Yeah. Right.
But I mean, I think he totally missed the point. Like, it's not about that, like, and also, you need to be aware that, like a lot of the scripture is actually poetry. There's, words are used, to paint pictures, not necessarily be like strictly applied in a literal sense, so.
Yeah.
Like one of the commandments, for example, in the Torah was, you don't boil a baby goat in its mother's milk. Well, what does that mean? Well, maybe it means that, you don't cook food in the the fluids in which gave it life, or something like that. I mean, I don't know, but
Yeah, I'm sure similar sort of things must happen in the Amish, because they, I think in every culture, I think you will find those rules and regulations that drive the culture. That's why I thought maybe it's got, you can incorporate religion into that culture, and the culture is not the religion, and the religion is not the culture, but there's a people, okay.
Well, I suppose it begs the question is, like, culture exists, but what's the purpose of it? What is the purpose of it?
what is the purpose of it? And I think, if we could answer that question, then we're probably on the road to seeing how we move forward in order to bring all the peoples of the earth together, without spoiling their culture of any description, but using the foundations of maybe the love of their culture or love in the culture. Okay.
I mean, in a simple sense, without too much complexity, but in a simple sense, everyone who walks the earth is a human. There's the common denominator.
Yes, yeah, no, I agree. There's a common denominator, and every human has a soul. There's a common denominator. And science has shown us that there are different dimensions, that we live in different dimensions. So there's a common denominator.
I mean, you cast your mind back, like Hitler, like the culture that presumably, he and others were architect of. The purpose of that was very much about compliance, I think, wasn't it? And beliefs.
As a subculture, I don't know if there is such a word, but yeah.
This whole idea that people with blonde hair and blue eyes and white skin were somehow superior to everyone else. So.
Yeah. And so he got, because it was in a time of depression, he could bring the people together by, creating an identity. That's the word I used earlier. So you got a whole.
Well, in one sense, the economy, it was almost an idol. Well, it probably is. It's an idol in its own right. You need to do this because the economy needs us to do that.
Yeah.
Well, what's the economy? What is the economy? Is it real? So.
Yeah.
That's when I get most animated. On the occasions that I watch TV, it's just like, oh, we need to do this for the economy. Yeah, but what about people? Why aren't we doing it for people?
Yeah. So we need
it's subtle. It's subtle. It's very slippery, satanic ground. I think anyway.
It is. Oh, it is. I agree, and that's what makes the topic so interesting. Okay. Because I don't think anybody. I think probably at the time of Nelson Mandela's release from prison after 27 years, and then right now in Australia, where this vote of the yes/no vote, I think people are starting to think about their culture.
It's interesting, because I think about people like Desmond Tutu, for example. And if you would ask me, what was Desmond Tutu's legacy, I couldn't tell you, but what I would say to you is that he was a joyous man with an incredible sense of humor and, overwhelmingly compassionate and caring for people and communities and things like that. I mean, I don't know what your sense of, because you're closer to him than I was, but I mean, so when you start to talk about, culture and what does it produce, well, I mean, if he is a result of culture change, then hey, bring it on. From my perspective, anyway. So.
Yeah, but it's back to the individual. You see, within any culture, there are individuals that stand out. Okay. That
and they do stand out, and I think that's, see, I suppose, like, the absolute fundamental question, when you, well, for me anyway, as you try and boil it down, is like, when you ask yourself the question, like, how do I want to live this life? Do I want to live this life where I develop, a cherished, intimate relationship with my Creator and seek guidance and direction from God, or do I think that I know better?
yeah.
I mean, because that's essentially what the whole Garden of Eden story is about, isn't it?
Tell me more.
Well, I mean, Adam was created perfect in the image of God, and there's the tree of life, and then there's the tree of good and evil, and Eve and Adam took the decision that they wanted to eat from the tree of good and evil because they felt that they would like they felt that they wanted to be in control of determining what was good and what was evil. Didn't need to, but they did.
Yeah. So that's happening all the time now. That's what you're saying.
It's the history of humanity. It's one train wreck after another.
Yeah, yeah. And it's the.
I mean, and that's the story of the Bible. It's just, you go through the Old Testament, it's just, God said do this, and did they do it? No. God said picked another one. God said do this. Did they do it? No. God said do this. It's just one disaster to another.
Yeah.
And interestingly, like, my understanding, just based on that bit of study I've been doing, is that when Adam was created, he was both like a priest and king, like of the realm, like of the garden. But after the fall, that separated. So you would have priests, and then you would have kings. And it sort of really wasn't until Christ on the cross, who was both king and royal priest, where it came back again.
Okay.
Yeah. So humanity hasn't got a great track record, but it seems to me, and just from what I've read through Genesis, it seems to me that that the role of humanity within the cosmos is something quite significant, and we don't, as a collective, don't seem to appreciate that. Because you look at the biblical story and so on, and it talks about, the rulers above and the rulers below down, on the planet. And the way the narrative goes is that the rulers below will sit at the right hand of God. So that means above the rulers above, So there's a significant role for humanity in how all of this unfolds, So.
And I guess I believe it will unfold if one culture gets to understand the other culture, gets down into depth. Okay, then you start becoming tolerant, and you start becoming compassionate, and you can hold their hand without holding their culture.
Yeah. Yeah, no, for sure.
But instead, we are arrogant.
Well, and disconnected, and I think that's for me, with a lot of the study, it's about making sure that you remain in fellowship as much as possible.
Yeah.
And seek guidance and put your cares in your Creator's hands rather than arrogantly thinking, oh, I know better. I know you created me, but on this one, I think I've got this one.
Okay. What you're saying is you're talking about the individual, okay? And yeah, I agree. But does the individual have anything to do with the group that he or she is in? In other words,
Absolutely, because I think that's the definition of the church since the crucifixion, isn't it? Is that the church is every individual, who makes those decisions about, Christ and God in their life. And I think, it seems to me, in my limited understanding, in the year 2023, that that when there's this critical mass of unity around the culture, around believing and trusting in Christ as your God and Savior, and what that means as to how you live your day-to-day life. That it's at that point that things fundamentally change. And the incredible thing, I guess, from my perspective, is that if you look at the character of God, God isn't like some of these other deities where it sits on high and directs and punishes and rules. The God that I know and love is one who wants to be in partnership with you and have his will expressed through you, as a partnership working towards the discovery of the new creation. So it's not an autocratic God. It's I hesitate to use the word, but it's like a very democratic God, in the sense that it sees us, working hand in hand together for this creation. But as soon as we sort of say, "Oh no, I know better. I've got this. I don't need you. Thanks very much. I'll see you when I die." Well, that's and in that sense, it's an incredibly compassionate God too, because you look at the amount of failure there's been since the Old Testament and before. I mean, God's incredibly patient. It would have been very easy for him, to sort of say, "Oh no, this isn't working out. I'll just scrap that one, hit delete."
and yet that time is going to come, Don.
Mm.
That time is going to come. We're in the final age now, the Iron Age. And after the Iron Age is Armageddon.
Mm.
Okay. Where the physical plane gets taken away altogether.
Yeah.
Physical planes in plural get taken away altogether. God only knows what happens to those souls who haven't found their love and found their God again, their link. Okay, so there's no more compassionate God and that is destined to happen.
Yeah.
Okay, it's still another.
Who knows? It could happen tomorrow.
It could happen quicker than what the age is doing. The age is 132,000 years.
Mm.
But Moya says it will be a lot less than that because the way things have speeded up for the negative. Okay?
Well, the other irony in my mind is like, since Christ walked the earth, like what have we learnt? What have we learnt?
Yeah, yeah. Well, Christ came in at the start of this last final age. Okay. And also the Aquarian age. So there's a lot there, but we've got to, and we can still come together. But I think at the end of the day, what you've been alluding to or saying outright, it's all about the individual. Okay, it's all about the individual. And the individual needs to find that connection. By finding that connection, he'll help the people around him unconsciously, but he needs to find that link.
And I think too, and like this is like, I'm interested in sort of your view on it too, like the church, you look at Logos, for example, as a church. I don't know whether you describe it as that, but like the individuals who participate in that church, they like, is it a culture that operates there? No, I think it's people who want to belong because of their relationship with God. That's how I see it. That's the thing that is the glue that holds that group together.
I agree with you. I think it's Moya seems to talk more on writing, don't use the word church, that uses the word religion. And he talks about it was the very, very, very original religion, okay, before the various saviors came down, and Abraham and Jesus and Hindu and so on. And in order to take humanity to the next level, all the religions.
Because is Logos itself, is that a Greek word or a Hebrew word or something? I think
it was and still is the first word in the Bible, in the Old Testament. Okay. But goodness knows with translations now, it means the word of God.
Okay.
Yeah. So the Bible used to start off with the word logos. In the beginning, logos. In the beginning was logos.
Yeah.
Which version is it?
I don't know. NKJV. What does that mean?
I don't know.
It says, "In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth."
Yeah, that's a little way in. That start one with that. My Bibles, I've got a few of them. They're not easily at hand now because I don't use them very much. Or don't have. Yeah.
It's an important topic, though, and one that unfortunately is not discussed a whole lot. It's it seems to be part of this blindness, though, isn't it? It's very convenient, not to sort of even sit there and question, for example, the role of corporations and as you say, culture. What is it? Why is it important? What's it do? They're big questions, but ones that very rarely seem to get any airtime, from what I can see.
Yeah, I think if a definition could possibly something to the effect that if your culture brings you together with other cultures in understanding, then
it's culture of inclusiveness, isn't it?
Yeah. But if your culture, let's say, a Google culture compared to a Microsoft culture. Okay, you know, they will never come together because they.
No, well, it's reductive thinking, isn't it? It's about reducing things into parts rather than building it up into a single. Yeah.
Right. Okay. Whereas somebody like Elon Musk, you know, everything is open source with him. He wants to share with everybody, whether he's talking about space or his Neuralink that he's got, or his boring machine under the ground. You know, he doesn't patent any. He's never patented anything. Okay. Now, to me, he's a symbol of what the future looks like. Okay? And so we just need more people who are, well, he happens to be the richest person in the world, but he still keeps his humility. He's still a simple man. Yeah.
He's an interesting guy, isn't he? Bit of a mystery in a lot of ways.
Yeah, it's one of the topics that I enjoy, and I collect anything that he's doing on a daily basis, basically. Anything new that comes,
he must have huge numbers of people working on stuff though, because he seems to produce stuff, you know, like in really short time frames, doesn't he?
Yes, he does. He's you know, every aspect is in like a unit. You know, whether you're talking about, you know, the Tesla electric motor car, you know, or you're talking about the boring company, or you're talking about the Neuralink, or you're talking about outer space. You know, he's a programmer, and he can work on the factory floor, and he's actually slept on the factory floor in times of crisis. But he's also incredible. People want to work for him. He gets the best out of people. Okay. So yeah, I think there are individuals like that. You know, it's like Nelson Mandela. People wanted him to be president. People enjoyed being a citizen of South Africa when he was president. Okay. I don't think Australia has reached that point yet where there's somebody that everybody loves. Okay.
Don't think so. No, it's still quite a divisive nation in many respects, as you've experienced firsthand.
Yeah.
Hardly a nation of inclusiveness.
Yes. So, yeah.
Yeah. No, it's interesting times. So.
Yeah, maybe it's a good time to.
It's a good question, though. One certainly worth a lot more thought and contemplation. That's for sure.
Yeah, I'm glad you agree with that, because it just caught my imagination, and it's quite interesting because I asked Right Cream, I know you use Right Cream, and I also asked ChatGPT a question based on culture. Okay, it was like a couple of sentences into one, and they both came out with totally different answers, but still interesting. And I had to push them with more questions about it before they came out with greater depth. Okay, and then ChatGPT started this thing of complimenting me. You know, yeah, you got an AI complimenting me in my research and my questions, and saying, wow, you think very deeply, well done. You know, you must now communicate this with the world. And I'm thinking, this is an AI talking to me, you know. I love it. I love the AI. I think we're moving forward in leaps and bounds, and that's not
very good. Very good.
Yeah.
Okay then. Well, I look forward to talking to you next week, eh?
Yeah, that will be great. That'll be great. Thanks very much for participating and helping with the culture thoughts.
No, it's been good. It's been really good.
Okay.
Okay. You take care now, eh?
You too, man. Cheers.
Okay then. See you now.
Bye.
Bye.